Good boy. Good boy.
And then feel free to have a seat.
Perfect. Ready?
Make yourself comfortable. And then we put on the form and everything on the website. We start recording consultation training sessions and stuff. It's just help with COVID.
Oh,
Kind of
sure.
just educate people and also show people that our methods work. So you can actually see Wallace's training sessions
Oh.
up on YouTube.
Yes.
So I read over your form. It seems like general obedience. You're really
Yeah.
concerned about off-leash recall. And then I think you mentioned about off-leash heel.
Yeah, and he just eats foreign objects he shouldn't eat.
Yeah, like tennis balls, I think
Yes,
it was,
yes.
right? Yeah, okay. Anything else about Gus here that I should know about?
Well, I guess the only other thing is when he gets scared, he kind of shuts down. So
Yeah.
for example, I was at my parents' house this past weekend, and my dad pulled him out in the kitchen, and then he like hit a towel against the cabinets, and then he didn't even want to be in the house for the rest of the night.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then he woke up in the morning and it was fine. But he's like that with window washers too. Like he didn't want to come in our apartment after the window washers were there for like a whole day. So,
Oh, wow.
But yeah, the only other time I seen him do that behavior is when my dad like didn't hit him, it hit the cabinet.
Gotcha. Anything else about Gus?
He's really smart. He does catch on to things really quickly, but he's stubborn.
Yeah. He's pretty good. Just like when he gets like a toy or something that he shouldn't, like out in the park, he just becomes like really possessive and then just kind of like runs away from you and like will not stop.
Gotcha.
Like
Gotcha.
will not kind of
Listen.
will like disregard the recall
Mhm.
and just kind of go off on his own.
Gotcha. Anything else?
I don't know. Are you looking for anything specifically?
No, just whatever, like, things that you're trying to address, like, so we have the obedience, that we have the general possessiveness of things.
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty good. So like, other than that, I think the biggest thing is like we don't want him to continue to swallow like tennis balls. Like he eats like the rubber part.
Yeah, and generally just to come back when we're outside, because I feel bad. He should be able to be off leash and like run around a little bit, but for his safety, I mean, he needs to be able to come back.
Correct.
That's what we call.
Okay, so, so I've been currently training Wallace. I don't know if you guys know Emmett and Jax.
Yep,
Jackson.
Emmett, we know Emmett. Emmett's the little guy who just sits. He's so
Oh, yeah.
he's so calm. He
Yep.
just sits by his owner at the park. He doesn't
Yeah,
really
yeah,
play.
little-
Yeah, we're all in like the same like morning playground.
Well, we don't take him anymore because he needs a haircut. That's why he's sliding over the floor. Because he eats tennis balls, and it's like more work for us than it's worth to take him to the park and trace him around when he gets a tennis ball. Because he doesn't even want to engage with other dogs at that point. He's just looking for tennis balls the whole time.
Sure.
Gus.
So,
Take him.
yeah, so all those dogs, of course, well, I'm assuming you did some research or know more about like how we train just through.
Yeah, just like Bree and Brian were telling us a little bit about, how to use the 2 leashes and with the
E-collar. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, we tried clicker training, did well, but then we kind of fell off.
Yeah, that was more like us not following through, I guess.
Well, with clicker so I've been doing this 10 years.
Yeah,
And when I first started training, I was completely anti-e-collar, anti-prong collar.
right.
And I was like, those things are inhumane, blah, blah, blah. Then I became a trainer,
Yeah.
and I was taught with clicker training, and I very, very quickly learned the low ceiling that clicker has.
Right.
So I kind of go through the different approaches. So one is with clicker, realistically, like it doesn't transfer to the real world very well.
Right.
Okay, because if, dogs aren't meant to be in a home, they're not meant to be kenneled, they're not meant to be leashed, like, they're not even meant to be dogs. This is something that humans, way back when, through breeding and then all that stuff, have created different breeds of dogs and all that stuff. And of course, for us to coexist, this is what it is now.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go outside with like cheese or steak or chicken or your treats, whatever, if there's something that more rewarding, like a random tennis ball
Or goose poop.
or goose poop, he's gonna opt for that instead. Okay, because he's like, I get that at any point in the home or another
Right.
day, but I only have so much time where I'm around goose poop, right? So that reward is very high for him. That now there's kind of a disproportionate like a gap in between where it's like chicken is not going to measure up to goose poop,
Right.
And he's a dog. And people are like, why do dogs make goose poop? I don't know, they're a dog, They're not like humans where we're like, that's gross.
Right.
So That's one thing. And then when I deal with my behavioral cases, like I specialize in aggression.
Okay.
So like,
He's not aggressive.
yeah, no, he's just a standard pup. If a dog is being leash reactive, like they don't really care about what's in your hand in that moment. It's kind of like I'm lunging and barking. This is what I think is important right now. Gentle leader, which usually pairs in conjunction with the clicker, is a good tool. It's effective. It gives the owner more control. But like, let's say you're able to reinforce it and all that stuff because you have the leash on. Is that when you take the leash off, now you don't have any means of making something happen. There's no way to reinforce it. Then we have prong collar, which is the spiky looking one that some people walk their dogs on, which is an even better tool. It gives you more control, but same thing, if you unclip the leash, you're limited. You can't, if your dog decides I'm gonna chase the squirrel, you can't make them return.
Right.
E-collar is the only tool that guarantees off-leash control.
Right.
Because and you know, the ones that we use, the one that Bree and Brian have goes up is a 3/4 mile range for their particular mile. Okay, so obviously there's plenty of range for the standard family pet, like their dog's not gonna get that far from that.
No,
But
this
that's-
guy won't go that far either.
But that's the range of it because they're meant for hunting dogs. And then, so if, like actually Emmett, you know, they did 12 weeks, they did a full off-leash program. And I don't know if you heard, did he tell you about his coyote story?
Yeah, where he basically was put face to face with a coyote, and if the dog wasn't trained, he probably would have gone after the coyote and been demolished.
Is that Jax or Emmett?
No, Emmett was like face to face with a coyote, I think in Lincoln Park.
Yep.
And
Oh,
because he
geez.
was so well trained, I forget his owner's name. He called
Sean.
back and Emmett came right away. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
didn't even like question it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is like a really good example of like why.
And it's like the craziest thing. You're like, coyote? Really? I'm like,
Right.
There's a lot in Chicago.
yeah. I was funny because I was working with a client over by Diversity and Inner Lakeshore, by like that golf range.
Yeah.
And it was like 5:30. There was a coyote like literally 100 feet from us, just like wandering around.
Right.
So, you know, so it's one of those crazy stories. But that's the stuff that I tell people, like, you want to have reliability
Right.
in those moments because that's when it really matters.
Yeah.
Like if you're at the dog park and you call your dog, it's annoying if they don't return, right?
So annoying.
But, you know, it's like he's not going to run away.
No,
Right.
we're not worried about him running away.
It's more so like in the case of emergency, if something happens that we don't account for, that we want to make sure that we have the ability to either make it happen or we've done training and we've practiced enough is that it does happen, okay? So e-collar is the only tool that can afford us that. And they have different kind of tiers in terms of effectiveness. And for me, e-collar is the most consistent. It's the most effective. It's the easiest for people to learn. So I go, well, if it's the best method, why would I use anything else, right? So we use food for puppies under 6 months because they're puppies. You know, it's like kindergarten school. Like I don't expect a kindergartner to learn college level stuff.
Right.
That's what we do with him.
Is the food stuff or
The food, just like,
was that your
Oh,
phone?
that's my fault.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's fine. No, you're fine. It's because the client I had earlier had her stuff there, so I was like, oh, did she leave her stuff? Yeah, it's the most consistent tool.
Right.
I know what I can achieve with it, and as long as the owner does their homework, we always get to that level. And it's very simple. It's just, of course, you have to practice
Right.
and you have to do
You
your
gotta
homework.
do it.
But the main thing that I remember when I was doing clicker training is that at some point people either would give up on it or stop doing it because they're like, it's not working. Like it's
Right.
not translating into the real world, or like they don't want to have their pouch or their Ziploc with retreats in their pocket and all that
Right.
stuff. Because then it's just like now my fingers are all dirty and you know, there's like all the other components to it.
Right.
So e-collar, we don't have to use food. I very rarely do. If I do, it's because I'm working with a dog that's insecure. I want to help boost confidence, and that can work through food. But for the most part, we just use the remote, the e-collar itself. Okay. So in this case here with Gus, the first thing that we always teach is leash walking to get him to walk at our side with no pulling. Okay, that's the foundation for everything, and that's typically a 2-class process. The first class is just teaching Gus what to do. The second class is teaching you how to use body language to. Who's done the fit? It's probably Rizzo. He's a Rhodesian. He's like big. And if you leave, he just like starts
Oh.
being a brat. So, and you can ask Bree and Brian, like, you know, how did it work? Because since this is standard stuff, This is general obedience, very minor behavioral things. And it's like functional family pet. Leash walking, come when I call you, and then if we get to there, we do stationary control. Like here, I was just doing place work with a previous client, which is if she sends her dog here, the dog will move for like 2 to 3 hours. Okay, so like if they want to go to like a restaurant patio and they don't want to, bother with what the dog's doing, like all this exploring and stuff, is we have duration control, right? So the 3 commands, very simple commands, but they're the ones that people use the most often.
Yeah.
We also have like stay, sit, and down, which this is kind of all those things in one command itself. So if the owner wants a fully off-leash trained dog, we go through all the commands. There's 6 family pet commands total. Heel, come, sit, place, down, stay. Other than that, most people just do heel, come when I call you, and then go here and don't move. Those like the simple family pet stuff. They give you the trifecta of control.
Mm-hmm.
So leash walking is typically 2 classes. It's very simple. By the 3rd class, we're already jumping into recall.
Okay.
Now, recall tends to be the command that takes people the longest to teach because it requires you to go somewhere. Now, I'm assuming you guys are over by in Lincoln Park across from that. So for you, it's very convenient. Just cross the street and then you can practice, right? So that's why for Sean, once they moved to Lincoln Park, because they originally, when I worked with them in Lakeview, is their training progressed very quickly because they lived right across the street from the park. Mm-hmm. So, but for most people, recall takes the longest because it requires them to go somewhere, bring their dog, practice, and then go back home again. Okay? So recall is typically another 2 classes. And then how fast that progresses just depends on how much you practice with him. Then class 5 and 6 would be, go here, don't move type of stationary control. That's typically a class, and like the final class, in most cases, it's just like an overview of where do we have any questions, where are we struggling, are we having issues, which in most cases, if there are any issues with the client and their dog, it's because they're not going high enough in the collar. Okay, like they feel bad, like, oh, I'm hurting my dog, and I'm like, dogs bite each other, like you're not hurting your dog. And we don't we're not like coming in at 100 making the dog yelp. We start low, we work our way up. And I think Wallace's is actually low. I think his is like in the teens, like the mid, like kind of 14 to 16 range. And he does really well with that number. Mm-hmm. The dog that just came from, which is actually like, Wallace is what, 50 pounds, 40 pounds maybe?
No, Wallace is huge. Wallace is like 60.
Is he 60, 70? Okay, so he's bigger. This dog here, she's probably 15, maybe 25 pounds. Her number was like 30. Oh. Okay, so she has a higher number than Wallace because she's just physically more resilient to the e-collar than he is. So that has nothing to do with size. It just comes down to the temperament of the dog. Exactly.
Yeah, he's probably going to be low.
Well, you'd be surprised. Because I've had dogs that are super insecure, and the owner's like, this is going to be really easy, it'll be super low. The dog is like very high in the collar. Oh. Because physical toughness is different than emotional toughness. Okay? But we don't know that, Gus knows that. Okay? So the first class is where we find all these things out about him. We start low, we work our way up. So like we typically start around 10 or so, because that's when dogs start to feel it. And we gradually go up. Mm-hmm. So, are you familiar with an e-collar at all, other than like what you've heard from Bree and Brian?
I mean, my cousins had one for their dog, but I never really all I had to do was hold it, and the dog would listen. I didn't actually do anything.
Sure.
But I never clicked it.
Okay.
But and growing up, we always had electric fences. I remember training with the electric fence.
Yeah, same technology. So electric fence operates a little bit more differently.
You get a noise first, right?
There's that, but then there's also like the levels. So I think it might have like 5 levels in terms of intensity because it's just about don't escape the yard. They don't care about how the dog feels. It's really like just don't escape the yard because the dog could run away, dog get hit by a car or whatever. E-collar, so the ones that we use go up to 127. So imagine that 5 and 127 are actually the same intensity, but I have 122 more divisions in my collar than the electric fence does. Okay. And that's the difference between like cheaper brands and models is that they go to like 5 or 10. So your dog is either not listening or yelping because the gap is so big.
Oh, it's like not like a fine tune.
Exactly. So, he could be between, 15 to 25, so I can go to 20, and go to 21, 19. I could really fine tune it to Gus, so that we're not trying to get him rolling on the ground or anything like that. We're trying to get a balance of urgency, which makes the command important, and how do you say, like a smoothness of like, he's not like, oh my God, what the hell was that? Okay. So have you ever been to a chiropractor or a physical therapist?
I'm a physical therapist.
You are a physical therapist, okay.
Yeah.
It's a TENS unit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a miniaturized TENS unit, that's all it is.
Oh,
So, like-
see, that's okay.
So people usually think it's like a taser, you know, they think it's like a electrocution or sticking your finger in an outlet.
Yeah.
Now, with a TENS unit, I believe, you know, like if someone has a pacemaker, they have to be, can you even use it, or they just have to be careful how they use it?
I don't think I think it's contraindication.
Okay, so there's that factor, and I also believe, like, if there's water involved, there's still risk of some kind of electrocution, is that correct? Yeah, we don't have that with e-collar. Okay, e-collar, the devices that we use are fully waterproof, both the transmitter and the receiver,
Oh, good.
so you can go swimming in it and all that stuff. Again, for him, the model I'd recommend, 3/4 mile range, plenty of range for the standard family pet.
Yeah.
And the way we approach it is much like you would approach it with the human, where you would start low and you'd work your way up, and then they would tell you that's too much, and then you would go down and like let the machine do its work, right? It's the same thing for dog training. We start low, we work our way up until I find Gus's point where I'm like, this is where it's really effective for him. Now, the difference with dogs is that number may change according to what's going on within the environment. So if like we were training in here, he could be really low because there's nothing going on in here, right? But then once we go to like, you know, outside and he's around dogs and stuff, 15 might become 45, you know? So the goose poop, you know, the number might change because maybe the goose poop is worth even 45.
Mm-hmm.
So earlier, the first client I had today, she has been working with me for her dog's reactivity, and today was her 8th class. And for 4 or 5 classes, she was struggling with the reactivity. She couldn't stop it, okay? And her dog was already at 80 out of 127, okay? So the reason why it took her so long, because I kept telling her, go higher, go higher, go higher, is that mentally and emotionally she felt bad, or she thought she was going to screw her dog up. And I go, you're not going to screw your dog up, because it's all about consequence to stop something, and dogs bite each other. So finally, in the past week, she had to going up to 114. Mm-hmm. And then when I saw her today, I said, how'd it go? She's like, great. He's not lunging, he's not barking, he's actually a lot calmer. And she was a lot calmer because she was so anxious because she thought it wasn't working.
Right.
And I was telling her, I'm like, no, I'm like, every dog has a breaking point. You just got to find it. Okay. Now in his case, it's more of an extreme because we're trying to stop a behavior, like the reactivity. Whereas in most cases where it's just general obedience, like with the guy like Gus, it's not, in most cases, it's not to that degree. Okay. Because there's no underlying behavioral issue. I'm trying to think. I don't remember what Emmett's number was. I think this was like 20 to 30s. Wallace is like 12 to 16, if I remember that correctly.
And I think you know how to walk around.
I think Jax has a higher number, and Jax actually ran off on Marina, and that's why she contacted me for training because he took off on her, and she's like, yeah, that's not going to happen again. So that's why she did, because she's very strict.
Right.
So she progressed very quickly with her training, and she was completely like, tell me what I need to do and I'm gonna get it done because I'm not gonna let this dog run away. Okay? So questions so far?
No, I mean, do you have any questions?
No.
So I guess to clarify, like you explained the sessions, like 2 sessions is recall. So actually I do have a question. So you basically said the 3 commands are, what is it, like
Heel, come, and place.
So how does that translate to like him not eating a tennis ball?
Oh, because that's easy. Because that's just don't touch the tennis ball. So stopping stuff is simple. So like, I was raised old school, I was spanked. So if I talk back to my mom, if I didn't do my chores, I didn't do my homework, it was spank, spank, spank. Right? One consequence for a multitude of behaviors. So the e-collar acts as 2 things. It can act as a teacher, where we teach skills like sit, stay, come, place, heel. And it can also act as an aversive, which is don't do that, right? So if I see him going after a tennis ball, then I can use the remote to stop him from pursuing the tennis ball, and I can also use the remote to make him release it, because it's simply applying a negative to the behavior, right?
Conditioning him to associate with the negative.
Correct, right? Now, let's say you go, well, I don't want him to not like tennis balls, I just want him to like not always go after them. You can fine tune it, and it's super simple.
Is that with a command, or is it just?
I personally teach things as default. So if I know I have a dog, for instance, I have a client's dog who, if they go to a dog park, if they take a ball from a dog, will become aggressive over it, okay? So I said, okay, then we're just not gonna let the dog do that, period. Right? Otherwise, you're constantly having to manage your dog, you know? So the way dogs learn is they can technically do something until you say no, okay? So with people, I know that I don't run red lights because I'll get a ticket. I just know that, and I just don't do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dogs don't do that. He thinks, oh, I can grab and chew on this tennis ball until you say no. So then you're always having to say no. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I just teach them, you just don't touch tennis balls. Okay, so then I'm gonna get the behavior. Now let's say I'm playing with him with the tennis ball and I'm throwing it, we're playing fetch. That's different because now we're engaging. Then I would cue some kind of release like drop or whatever. But again, it's super simple because I'm just like drop, and if he doesn't drop, I apply the negative.
Okay.
And then he'll, okay, here you go. And I'll, thanks, go get it.
Yeah.
Okay? So stop, behavior-wise, the stuff that you listed for Gus here is simple.
Right.
Okay, jumping on people, again, it's just consequence for jumping on people. For chewing on tennis balls, it's just you don't chew on tennis balls.
I don't care if he has tennis balls, just the ones he finds in the park, right? Like that.
Sure, yeah.
Because they're like ripped up, and he just eats the rubber.
Correct. And those types of rubbers can actually deteriorate their teeth.
Oh, great.
Yeah, like the average, you know, what are you eating there, buddy?
What do you got? What do you like?
The rubber that they use to like, or the glue that binds, you know, the tennis balls and stuff, interacts, whatever it is, interacts with their saliva, and it can deteriorate their
Oh,
teeth.
you're done.
Sorry. Goose poop? Don't eat goose poop.
Yeah.
That's what's simple, okay? That's why those things I'm not worried about.
Yeah.
And he's not neutered, right?
No, he's
Yeah.
not getting there until December.
So that doesn't matter either.
Okay.
We have a dog in there that's not neutered either.
I was
And he's-
concerned. I was like, do we need to neuter him?
If he was spayed, if he was a female unspayed, that would matter. Simply because if they go into heat,
Right, because you can't use 10 on somebody when they're.
so,
That's interesting.
otherwise, it doesn't matter for the males.
Okay.
Okay, so you can start as soon as you like. The collar I recommend for him is actually the same model that Wallace is on. This is
Mhm.
2300. It's
Okay.
meant for 70 pounds and under. And with his temperament and size and stuff, because I'm assuming he's probably gonna get a bit bigger.
Maybe like 8 more pounds. He's not gonna get that much bigger. He's
Okay.
45 right now. I just weighed him. I think he'll be like 55.
Okay.
Maybe
Sure.
50.
We'll see.
Yeah. The only thing that may inhibit is because of the e-collar, it has 2 probes to make contact, is the fur.
Oh, he's supposed to get a haircut yesterday, but they screwed his number. So he said he wanted the 28.
Gotcha.
So he said to have like his hair has to be shorter for it or something.
No, like it'll just,
Oh, you might have to turn it up higher.
Yeah.
exactly,
Just be tighter.
because you have to make a connection, tighter or higher. And then I'd be mindful, just so you guys are aware, like his flat collar here, because that's a snap buckle, right?
Yeah.
Is that it's very loose. You want to be mindful that that doesn't slip over his head.
Yeah.
But snap buckles can also, is that a snap buckle?
Yeah.
Yeah, those can also break. That's actually happened to me in a year at least 5 times, where a dog was pulling on the snap, and the snap had too much tension and it just cracks open, and then you have a free dog. So what I always recommend for people is either doing like a martingale, or you can get like a slip chain. So you can keep the collar, but you're just not using it for a leash in case there's any pressure, or a regular flat buckle style collar that looks like a belt. You know,
Okay.
those are secure. And these, because you tighten them, and then with pulling, they become slack again. So I personally don't do.
I think we have I know the one that you're talking about, like once you pull it gets tighter.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it doesn't slip over the head. Now with training, it's not going to matter what he wears because
Collar.
because of the collar. But definitely in the beginning and stuff, and just in the off chance of like something happening, is that I always deter people from doing snap buckles because they do break.
Okay.
Let me think here. Any other questions or any other?
No, I think this all sounds great. I think we should do it home when we do this.
You do want to count that falls apparently here, you know, that happened so quick.
Yeah,
Is that, so what we've been doing because of COVID
is doing it outside.
is we're doing outside. Now today, everybody was meeting us here because it rained in the morning and I wasn't sure it was gonna be raining throughout the day, so which to make it easier. So this space in total is 13,000 square feet that I have. So like where you walked in, that big open area, there's like, I think it's like about 5,000, 6,000 square feet right there, is typically where we'll come and we'll train, so we still have space. But we've been trying to train as much as possible like outside. But we know like at some point, like that's not gonna be working anymore because it's gonna be either too cold or rainy and stuff.
Mhm.
Is that we have this facility when it comes to transference. So the reason why we were doing Ozpark is because it's super busy. There's everything there. There's dogs,
you wanna see
people,
them
rollers,
all
skateboarders.
over there.
Yeah. It's a very realistic environment to practice in. So for like, I told them, if you can get your dog to listen here, which we always do, going home is not the problem. You know, like it's gonna be super easy. In some cases, for people, it's unrealistic because they live in a suburb and it's quiet over there. So I'm like, if you can train your dog here, your dog's gonna be great anywhere else.
Yeah.
Now we've had clients train here, but it still transfers to the real world because it's all about the number. So if his number in here is like 20, because there's nothing going on, and I'll tell you, if you're struggling at home, raise the number. And I'll tell you, you go to 25, and you go to 30, or whatever. And then so I had a client, her dog's doing a daycare and training with us, and she had her second session, and one of her complaints was, you know, she's not walking as well as she was when we first started. And I was like,
She's
what's
not
your name?
used to it.
Well, not so much used to it, but the owner wasn't escalating quickly. Okay, so the owner was raising the number, but she would constantly go from 15 to 35, right? And I told her, your dog is learning that it'll take you 10 minutes before you hit 35, so she's gonna use those 10 minutes to do what she wants. So then she emailed me the next day and said, Jesse, I started at 35, and she was perfect from the start. And I was like, yeah. I was like, because you found the number that made you more important than the environment, and then since you started right off the bat with it, there was no time to, you know, push boundaries, okay? So that's the hard part when working with clients. You know, like earlier, I gave her the answer on week 3, go higher, but she was already at 80 and she felt bad. And logically, she's like, holy crap, that's 2/3 of the power. You know, she was hoping it was gonna work on a lower number, and it just wasn't. So
moral is go higher.
yes, you know, I mean, for me, growing up, as I got older and physically tougher, you know, single spanking wasn't enough. Then I was like, now I'm not gonna spank you one time, I'm gonna spank you like 10 times. Right, just increasing that level of discomfort, and so I'm like, all right, cool, like, yeah, that's not worth the spanking or whatever. So dogs are physical animals, they bite each other. The e-collar will never cause any kind of harm that a dog bite would. But in most cases, dogs are very physically tough. They have a very high level of discomfort because that's their language, you know? That's why when they puppy bite, people are like, ow.
Yeah.
You know, because we don't have fur that protects us and our level of tolerance isn't that high, whereas theirs is. So when we approach it, it's very logical. You know, I don't come in going on, you know, 100, just like you wouldn't come into like someone and just having it all the way maxed out. Like you're like, tell us when it's too much. Okay, now we adjust it. Same thing for Gus. He tells me what's too high and he tells me what's too low. Okay?
Got it.
So I think for what you're wanting, from what I saw, the 6-week is your program.
Okay.
We do have 9 and 12 week. The difference is the 9 and 12 week, we teach more things.
Okay.
You know, like sit, stay down. And then 12 week is what Emmett did. So Emmett does all his stuff completely off leash. Okay. So, because Sean really wanted, he wanted the complete, you know, the whole 9 yards or whatever. So Emmett's capable of doing all his commands completely off leash. In most cases, owners really just want their dog to not pull, come when they call them, and then not move. So I keep it simple. Otherwise, if you're wanting more control, you can also do 9 or 12. 6 is just what I'm recommending.
Right.
From what you
Based off of what we're saying.
Exactly.
So if you do that, can you change your mind?
You can. So we have a client here who was doing 6, and it's going so well for them that they want to do the whole 12.
Okay.
Now the only thing would be the way we book my schedule is if you do 6 classes, that's 6 weeks, right?
Right.
And you would coordinate with Maria, and let's say we have a time that worked for everybody. That would be your time for 6 weeks plus 1, so 7 weeks, no one can take that time from you, okay?
Uh-huh.
So you get priority. But then, like, let's say we get another client and they want that time and they book it after you.
Right, yeah,
Right.
that's how it works with my appointments with my patients.
Sure.
I get it, yeah.
So then, let's say you decide, hey, we want to expand, we say, yeah, sure, no problem, but somebody already booked your time after
So then
your
you're
priority is
finding
up.
time.
Yeah,
That's
so
fine.
that'd be the only thing. Otherwise, if no one wants it, then Maria will just block off longer,
Okay,
and then you have more priority.
okay.
So that just keeps my schedule moving, and I don't get backed up and stuff, because I'm sure you can relate, right?
Yeah.
Because when I used, before I did that, oh, it sucked. Like, I would have a Sunday time that someone would cancel all the time.
Right,
And I'll just
it's
sit
usually
there.
like the beginning of the day or the end of the day.
Sure.
So annoying.
Yeah.
I get it.
So, and then when it comes to cancellations and stuff like that, because of COVID, we've been a bit more lenient, because obviously, if you wake up and not feeling well, exactly. We've kind of waived if you cancel because you're sick or something, not a big deal.
Mhm.
It'll just count towards priority. You don't lose the class. And then you can always reschedule as well. Just talk to me like, hey, we're gonna be out of town, and she'll adjust the calendar. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. So I used to do home to home, but because of COVID, I've been doing just outside.
Okay.
So we do Oz, and if for whatever reason weather wasn't good, we can simply just work here, and then you would just practice throughout the week when you are working with Gus, when you're walking him and all that stuff.
Perfect.
Okay. Anything else?
You'll give us the information for what caller to do, right?
Yes. So Maria will follow up with you.
Okay.
She'll send you a contract form. She'll send you the make and model that I suggest. It runs about $287 with tax. If you
Okay.
get on Amazon, it's a little bit cheaper.
All
They
right.
last a long time. I've had mine going on 8 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll see stuff for like $80 or $40. They're not the same level.
They're
They're not the same exactly. So just like you wouldn't tell somebody to get a cheap TENS unit, you want to get like a
Nice one.
exactly. Same thing for the e-collar. It comes with a warranty, so if anything happens within a year, I think you can even extend it on Amazon to like 3.
Okay.
You send it in, they repair it. The most common thing that I do come across is that it is a rechargeable lithium battery, just like in your cell phone. Is that after a few years, that battery may die out. If it's past warranty, just go to the site. You can buy a new one for $15-20. You open up your collar, you place it in a new one, you close it, and then it's good as new.
Awesome.
Okay.
Perfect.
So I've been using the brand for about 10 years. It's the most consistent and best brand in my opinion.
Good.
So it's in my, a good investment.
Yeah.
Okay. Most common question I do get is when does the e-collar go away? So I'm sure you've seen with Emmett and Jax, they have
Always
e-collars,
on.
right? The reason is, you guys drive?
Yep.
You go on the expressway?
Yeah.
Do you go to speed limit?
No, all the time.
Right. So neither do I, and neither do most people. That's opportunistic behavior, because unless we see a squad car, which then everybody all of a sudden is going to speed limit, right?
Yeah.
Because now there's threat of consequence. There's that threat of I might get a speeding ticket. Is opportunistic behavior. So think of the e-collar as a cop on a collar. When it's present, Gus is going to be better, and when it's not present, he's going to push the boundaries. Okay.
Mhm.
The only time he'd be really using it, like Emmett and Jax don't wear it all the time.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking maybe it's an outside.
They wear it outside, correct? Because they can't account for a coyote. They can't account for is my dog going to be a dog and chase after a squirrel one day randomly, right? At the end of the day, he is a dog. He doesn't think like a human. Where someone may not do something because they don't want to hurt someone's feelings or whatever. Like you know that and don't do that. Dogs don't.
Oops.
Okay. It's Rizzo.
Yeah, no, it's funny, my cousin's dog has an e-collar and he's a complete, I think the batteries have been dead for a year and doesn't even know it.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's
he
funny.
just listens. He's just like, they keep it on him and he doesn't even know that it's dead.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same with our dog when we had the electric fence. It could be dead and they still would listen to it.
Gotcha. So the one thing about the e-collar is,
Yeah.
like, let's say someone sets off a random firework
Yeah.
and they scare Gus, right?
Yeah.
Is you want to know you have a functioning collar, because I've had that happen.
Yeah.
That's actually the most common thing that happens to people. It actually has happened to me twice in the last month, walking my dog through Logan Boulevard. Is someone just set off a random firework, and my dogs hate fireworks, and they got spooked. And I didn't have them on the e-collars because they weren't going to be off leash. They were just, we were walking,
Right.
And then I was so mad because I was wishing I had my e-collar because that would have allowed me to
Right,
de-escalate them and calm them down.
Mhm.
But I can't account for people that decide to just randomly set off a
right,
firework,
right,
right?
right.
So it's kind of that I'd rather have it and not need it type of thing.
Absolutely.
But if he's good at the home, you don't need it. If he's good at your friend's house, you don't need it. It's kind of like we're going to the park, we're gonna be off leash, we're gonna have it on. It's hair.
Needs a
It looks
haircut.
like a
It's like,
crazy, yeah.
it's like a little cowlick.
Yeah.
And then with walking, the most common thing I get is people are like, oh, I took my dog out for a minute and then it was terrible, and I'm like, yeah, because the e-collar was gone. The cop was not there to reinforce the rules.
Right.
So it has nothing to do with my skills as a trainer. It has nothing to do with the tool itself. My dogs walk great with no e-collar. I don't need the e-collar. But when things that I can't account for happen,
I need the e-collar.
That's
So,
what they
so
suck.
do you walk your dog without the e-collar? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but they're on a leash.
Yeah,
But if they were to be off the leash, they would have their e-collars on.
okay.
Okay. But and then those instances where those fireworks went off, like I was really kicking myself, like, why not just put the e-collar on?
Right.
You know.
How many dogs do you have?
I have two. I have a pity and then a chihuahua.
A chihuahua.
Yeah.
The chihuahua's on an e-collar?
Yeah. He's only 8 pounds. He's fully off leash trained.
Oh my gosh, good boy.
Mhm.
Gus loves little dogs.
And it's the least invasive.
Yeah.
Um,
I have another question. Sorry, interruption. I just thought it came to my head. Do they lose their personality because
No.
of the e-collar?
No,
Okay.
they're still themselves. I don't want to create a robot,
Right.
but I want a dog that he can do what he wants. You can chase squirrels. I don't care. Be a dog. But when I call you, you're gonna get over here.
Okay.
Okay. And if something happens, I can make the dog return. That's the most important thing that a dog can learn is just the return. Leash walking is the next important thing, but it's the most used because you walk your dog, every day.
He does really well on his
No,
leash.
he
I mean,
doesn't.
for the most part, he does pretty well on his leash. He does well with the recall too. It's just.
You're way
it's-
too
it's-
bad. Well, to me means he does it all the time.
I mean, for me, he does it.
Is that why he's eating off tennis balls all the time to take into his car?
I don't know. He's the one throwing them up for you, pretty much.
No, damn
No,
it.
it's,
We have different,
We have to agree to disagree.
we have different opinions on what's good. Like, I'm an A+ student, he needs to be an A+ student.
Well, I get this too, right? Where people say like my dog's pretty good, and I'm like, right, but until you see a
yeah,
dog
no,
trained-
he's not. No, like I want him to, because like there's instances where we bring him to the park and you say come, and he takes like 5 minutes to do it. He doesn't do
Yeah,
it.
no.
So it needs to be like that, with that
Instantaneous.
instantaneous movement, which is why we're here.
He's a good dog in the sense he has a good personality. He's not a good rule follower.
Sure, he's
All
still
the
not
time.
been formally obedience trained,
Right.
where these things are consistent responses. Because for most part, for people, a good dog is a dog that's not aggressive, doesn't really pull too much, and maybe does a couple of things like commands, sit down and stuff like that. But really, people consider a good dog just a dog that's not aggressive. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I get
And
it.
for me, a good dog is all that stuff plus the rule
Right.
that they're well trained.
Yeah, 100%.
And I only care about what you care about. I care about what's going to be,
Mhm.
applicable to you.
Yeah,
I don't teach stuff that I don't feel you'll need. But if it's like, hey Jesse, we really like the control we're getting, you want more, then I go, okay, here's the other things that we teach.
So the 6-week class, what are the main things, the high level again? It's the recall, leash walking, and
Stationary.
stationary.
Correct. Yeah. So that's like the trifecta of
Yeah.
dog training.
Okay.
Walk without pulling, come when I call you, and don't move.
Because like,
Gus.
yeah, I guess he knows heel, but like I guess we've never
No,
really
he
like.
has a different version.
No, I understand that, but like it's like we've never really like used it out at the park or anything.
Gus, see, he eats things out the door.
He's just
His heel is that they follow behind you. That's like your heel. right?
Wallace right shoulder to left leg.
Right.
So if you ask like Sean or Bree or Brian to show you what heel looks like, heel is meant to be used from when you're going from point A to point B.
Okay.
Most people let their dogs wander. Sorry, buddy. Most people let their dogs wander and fool.
Come.
Okay.
See, there it is.
Um,
It's not gonna do it.
Now, even though a dog can be completely friendly, like I have a client whose dog broke the husband's shoulders twice
Oh, jeez.
in 2 years, and also sent him to the ER 3 times
Oh, because he's pulling so
just because
much?
he was pulling.
Ouch.
I had a client break fingers, had a client dislocate their elbow, shoulder.
Yeah, he pulled my shoulder really hard today. I was
Yeah.
in the perfect position over my head.
Yep. I had 2 clients break hips.
Oh,
So, and these are friendly dogs,
Because
okay? But they're friendly, untrained dogs.
right.
So even the friendly guys can, they're not being bad. They're not doing anything bad per se. Because
No.
bad to a human is,
They're just being dogs.
yeah. Because he's not meant to be on a leash.
Right.
This is something that we do because it keeps them safe, keeps them from running into the street and all that stuff. But my style of heel is very strict. If I take 1 step, he takes 1 step, I take 5 steps, he takes 5 steps, when I stop, he automatically
Is it like a
sits.
follow? Like heels kind of like follow? No.
Okay.
Well, technically, like he's following the handler, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, if you go to our YouTube channel, you can just, because
Right.
all the lessons are there, they're uncut, they're unedited. Is a lesson 1 is a good one to watch just because no one knows what they're doing. The dog doesn't know what's going on, the human doesn't know what's going on, and you just see like the craziness of what it is to what it ends up being.
Yeah.
And then the beginning of class 2s are always nice because then you see the improvement
Right.
from class 1 to class 2. So,
Has anybody failed?
no. The only way they would fail is if they don't do what I tell them.
Okay.
So, like the lady earlier, I told her for 4 or 5 weeks, higher, higher, higher. Had she never gone higher, that would have been a failure, but not because what I was doing wasn't working, because the owner didn't do what I said. Okay? That's the most common thing I come across is the owners feel bad. Okay? But that's why with filming stuff, I'm like, here, just watch. It'll show you how effective it is. And we actually did an interview, and I said, because this is the one thing that people struggle with, is they think that going higher is going to screw up their dog.
No.
And I'm like, and you're the perfect case of like how you felt that way, then you went higher and then it fixed the problem.
Yeah.
You know?
We won't be afraid to
No, he's
step
driven
on.
me crazy enough and almost made me cry because he won't come back.
Oh no, that happened too. The dog that broke that husband's shoulder, the wife broke down crying because
Yeah.
the dog wouldn't return.
Yeah, he makes me cry sometimes.
Yeah, because you're frustrated.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm not afraid.
No.
And now they tell me it's like a 10 unit, I'm really not afraid.
Yeah, it was funny because I had a client who had a Bernese mountain dog, and they're veterinarian, so they had tried all this stuff. The dog was being aggressive, and then I came in, and then the veterinarian said don't use e-collar, and she tried to cancel her consultation, but we have the 24-48 hour thing, right? So I was like, we can't refund you, but you can still have your consultation because that's what you paid for. So she did, and literally she did. I didn't know she was a physical therapist. I was like, it's just a miniaturized 10 unit, and she's like, are you serious? She's like, I shock people all the time then.
Right, yeah.
And she's like, my veterinarian told me all this other stuff. I'm like, well, veterinarians are ignorant.
Well,
They're just going by opinion. And we were able to resolve the issue because the vet was saying that was going to make her dog more aggressive. And I go, no, if you don't know how to use it correctly,
It makes
that can
it
happen.
aggressive.
But I'm a professional who's been doing this for 10 years.
Right.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And then, it's just
Gosh,
people-
these aren't for you.
have connotations because of what it is,
Right.
And that's why I use 10's unit as a reference because a lot of people have had it
Right.
or like the labor contraction
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah.
I tell people like that's the e-collar, but of course they're doing high levels to replicate labor contraction pains, which are very very uncomfortable. That's why the guys are having that level of pain, but we don't really operate that way.
Oh, you can, let's have you practice the labor contraction. I like this. That's hilarious. But yeah, no, I think this all sounds, really good. So we've seen everybody else succeed. Gus, you better succeed too.
Yeah, and you can go to our YouTube channel. The other thing is because of COVID, is all verbal instruction. I don't touch Gus. I just coach you through it. And we've been getting the same results that I would have gotten before.
Oh,
If anything, it's better because since you're doing everything, you're learning more. As opposed to I would work with them for a bit, then hand them to you, and already part of the work is done. Then you don't learn. The first class is always the hardest, but once you get over it, it just makes a lot more sense. But it makes you a better handler because when you're gonna need your obedience to be absolutely functional, or you need to make it functional, it's not about obedience training. It's about how do I use this tool to make Gus comply. And that's what I always stress to people because that's the thing that people don't think about.
mm-hmm.
Okay? Anything else?
Do you have any other questions there?
I think I'm good.
I don't think so. Are there any questions you should have asked?
No, the most common one is when does the e-collar go away, which I already went over.
Yeah, I actually wasn't even wondering that. I just thought it would be a forever thing. So, just,
Some people have issues with it. You know, they're like, the dog should know. I'm like, it's not a human. And even humans who know better still.
Don't their personalities change with like the seasons too or something? Like people like say like sometimes when the weather changes they
What can
change.
happen is in the wintertime, when they see the snow, he'll probably act like a spaz because they're excited to see the snow and stuff. But it's not really that the personality is changing, it's just that they're excited. Otherwise, they're pretty consistent. Once they go through the developmental stages, like 6 months and a year are very pivotal changes for a puppy.
Oh.
At 2 years, there might be another one. But other than that, 6 months and a year are the two
What happens
biggest
at
ones.
6 months? You just passed that one.
6 months is Terrible 2's brain, teenager body.
Oh,
sure.
great, that's him.
A year is teenager brain, adult body. 2 years, adult dog, adult brain, adult body.
Oh,
That's the changes.
so that's why he's having a little bit of a regression.
Yeah.
Being bad.
I mean, when people get puppies, they're like, oh, they're such a good puppy, they're so calm. I'm like, yeah, that's not gonna be forever.
That's what we thought about you guys.
Yeah.
Did we?
We did think he was good in the
He
beginning.
was all over the place. He's good. He's still good now.
Mhm. Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, I think
I don't think so. So
Okay.
basically, from here, Maria will just get a contact.
Correct,
with
yeah, I'm
us.
gonna call her and follow, because I had a couple of other consultations. So at the end of the day, I just give her a list of what I recommend, and she'll come back to you with pricing and all that stuff,
Okay.
breakdown, and then scheduling and everything like
So
that.
then we need to order the collar immediately once we get her.
Yeah, and then what I suggest once you get your collar is read the manual. I do send you videos to get you like updated, like how it works and everything,
Mhm.
so that you come to class, we can just jump into training.
Okay.
But also I suggest that you fiddle with it.
Oh boy.
Especially the remote, because sometimes what can happen is since it is electrical, they will send you a lemon, and like it should go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? It should be very incremental. In some cases, because it's an LED screen, you'll turn just a tiny bit, and it'll go from like 1 to 50,
Oh.
like that. And it shouldn't be that sensitive. It should be very incremental. So that's the one thing. It happens maybe a couple times a year where someone will get that type of collar, and that's why I'm exchanging, because it's a lemon. And then they'll get one, so we want to have that cleared out before the first class.
Okay.
Otherwise, because I tried to work with one like that, and it sucks. I'm like, I'm not going to do that again, because it's so scattered. Your dog will be fine, all of a sudden he's yelping because now the number's gone up too high for whatever reason. So,
Okay.
okay? Other than that, I don't foresee any issues here, as long as you do your homework, it should be
Okay.
pretty straightforward.
Gus doesn't have a test or anything?
No. You may see what people call like mobiness and stuff, or they think it's like doggy depression. And
Oh.
it's not, it's just because no one likes discipline.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, because you're doing more discipline,
Right.
he's gonna be like, oh, this sucks. But then once he gets over it and learns the rules of the game, all that stuff goes away. Like Emmett was like that in the beginning. I think Wallace has been pretty fine. I can't remember if Jax was ever like that. I think Jax recovered fairly quickly. But Emmett was definitely one in the beginning where he looked a bit mopey. And then, but he got over it. Now he's, running around doing his doggy thing, so.
Okay.
Okay?
I'm prepared for it.
Cool.
He'll be a moper, I know it.
That's all right. Well, it was a pleasure meeting everybody.
Yes, it was nice meeting you. We're very excited.
And then, if you have any questions you have forgotten to ask or anything like that, you're more than welcome to